You're on the podcast with Dino and Ashley. We both knew. We both knew. Somebody smirked. So
We knew.
You gave a tell.
We knew. All right. We last left off with us going on a vacation.
Oh, yeah.
And what a vacation that was.
Yeah, that was good times.
It was good times.
Yeah.
We were talking about the importance of dating your spouse.
I feel like you should tell a funny story about that vacation.
There was so many funny stories. I don't even know where to begin, but it was lovely. We might be all done with Tulum for now.
Listen, I love Tulum. I love it. We've been 4 times.
Yeah.
To like the same general spot because we built a nice routine.
But then they changed our routine.
We'd have breakfast. Ash gets second breakfast because Ashley loves food.
Just bare my soul to everyone. They already know that I love the foods. No, but we had all of our favorite spots that we like to go to. And we went there and everything was closed or just shut down or abandoned. It was kind of weird. And
it was really weird.
Yeah, not great. And then we had it set up. We were at 3 nights at one place and then 2 nights at another place. And the second place we went to, it was a little dirty and the water smelled like poop. And when we showered, we were like, what is that smell? And we were like, oh, it's on our skin.
It was not good.
It was not good. So
we left the night early.
We used miles for points for the whole thing. We just could not wait to get home and shower. I just felt like I hadn't washed my hair. It was starting to grow creatures out of it because we didn't want to get in the water.
And 2 years ago, we did the same vacation in Tulum, different place. And I got really sick when I was there. I got a parasite and I was sick for 3 months after we got back, and that thing did havoc. So I got PTSD.
Problems from that. Yeah. I think Tulum was trying to tell us we are not fit for them. We are not welcome there. We hear you, Tulum. We're done. But yeah, we are excited to just jump into a new week, kind of just share the thing that we were going to share and just kind of reflecting. That's one of the things we like to do when we're away on vacation is we like to reflect on things and see where we're at in our lives. And it's really bonding for us. But one of the things that always comes up is obviously we've been married 18 years this year, and we have gone through a lot of trials and a lot of hard times.
Obviously, Ash and I are going to talk about our trials, and it's going to be super easy for somebody else to do a comparison. This is not about the comparison game. Absolutely, we know the things that we've gone through are pale in comparison to what a huge amount of people in this world have had to deal with. So it's not about that. It's really just about going through stuff and how to deal with that with your spouse. So
but I also think that people have gone through things that are super hard for them.
Yeah.
And other people wouldn't think that they are hard at all. Yeah. So I think it's all just relative. And just focus on your own life and not
So it's not
comparing.
about that. We're going to caveat. It's not about that.
Yeah. But I mean, even just arguments or parenting, there's so many things within a marriage that you can disagree on. Financial problems, deaths in the family, miscarriages. I mean, there's so many things. And just to be able to figure out how to go through those things together is so valuable, because that is where the refining is within the marriage. And that's when you get bonded together. I remember when after we had the boys, we got pregnant and I had a miscarriage. And that was really shocking for me because I'd had 2 healthy boys. I don't have miscarriages. I have babies. I can just have them. And nobody had really talked to me about miscarrying before, so I didn't know it was so common. Once you have one, though, and you start talking about it, so many people have had them, and it's obviously comforting to know you're not alone. But for that, I remember that we even wrote about it in the book. That was so bonding for us because we just clung together, sought after one another, sought after the Lord for peace, and just thanking Him for protecting us. And, just having the right mindset through the trial was so, I just will never forget how bonding that was for you and I.
Yeah. And even leading up to the miscarriage, kind of set the stage. Ash and I had been married for, I don't know, maybe 7 years or something like that at that point when you had your miscarriage. And you and I feel like kind of were living in fairyland in that everything was just smooth and good. Like there was no major issues. Of course, you and I would have arguments and little things, but we never had to really deal with anything exterior. So this was the first thing that kind of hit us, and it was a really big punch in the gut, knocked the wind out of me because I just didn't expect it at all. I remember getting a phone call from you, and I was in my office, and you were like bawling your eyes out, and I was like, wait, what is happening? And it would just, I still remember how hard it was. But I don't think going through the hard thing was the predominant focus in my mind now. Like the memories I have, the predominant memories I have are how much God used that opportunity for you and I to go through something together. Because I remember taking care of you. You were hurting. You were not feeling good for a couple of days. You had to take pills to make it so that you could finish like the process and stuff like that. And clearly you had never gone through something like that. So to just be able to go through it together, something really hard in the moment, going through it, excruciating, awful. In hindsight, very bonding. It grew you and I closer together. It matured us in the right direction. It also brought us closer to the Lord because we leaned on Him. At the same time, I feel like you and I have gone through hard things and we've done it incorrectly where we haven't necessarily leaned into the Lord and leaned into each other. We've just kind of gone our own way. So I feel like trials have this way of pushing out or pushing in, and it really has to do with how you posture yourself, the perspective that you have when you're going through it, kind of your behavior and your character of which way you want to go when you're going through the harder things.
Yeah. Number one, I would say the trials or within our marriage is that you have to remember your spouse is not your enemy. The goal is to try to get back into unison and back into the one organism. And our war is not against flesh and blood. And we have to remember that. And it's so easy, especially if one of the people in the marriage is partly to blame for one of the things. You know, let's say there was a financial deal gone wrong, or Dino wanted to get out of the house more than I did, but I agreed to it. And then, a year later or whatever, I'm just making up a story, the house, loses its value and we can't sell it. And it's easy. Well, I told you we shouldn't have got the house. That is not helpful at all. The number one goal is to just remember that our spouses are not the enemies here. And how can we get back together and use this to grow together and to grow stronger? We're here to help support our partners and not rip them down.
Yeah, I think that that's a lesson even apart from going through trials, just like in life, that God's really been telling you and I over and over and over right now. We should be seeking reconciliation. So even through the harder things in life, when you and I are going through them, when it tears us apart, the goal is always to ask God, please give me an ability to reconcile this scenario. I don't care if I'm at fault, she's at fault, exterior things are at fault. My goal is to get back to a state of reconciliation. And that, again, we're talking in the context of marriage, but that easily overflows to other things. Even when somebody else has wronged you or something like that, the goal is always, how can I just get this reconciled? Because the Bible specifically even says that we should seek war with no one and have grace with everyone. So if that's the case, when something harsh comes between you and I should always be seeking out grace for you and giving an opportunity for you to feel like you can make mistakes and then still feel welcome back with me. Again, same goes for exterior things too, is like be gracious with other people and seek to just bring back together, be back in harmony.
Yeah, because that's what Satan wants. He wants us to be separated from our spouses. He wants us to be separated from other believers, other people in our lives. Like that just gives him so much joy to know that he's driving a wedge in between those things and between people. I mean, it's such great practice to start at home. Like, let's start within our marriages, which often seems like the last place. It's easier just to, serve and do other things, forgive other people, but less for your spouse, it seems.
There's another type of trial that I kind of wanted to touch on too, and it comes not as much around exterior things coming at you, but you and your spouse, like you and I, putting ourselves in a position that is difficult. Prime example is one of my buddies right now. I'm super, super excited for him because he's decided to sell everything he has with him and his wife have, generally speaking, played it pretty safe. They got married, moved into their house, and then they sat in that same place, raised their kids to started their teenage years and things like that. I've just wanted him and her to be put in a position that was harder. Go away from your family, go try something new, try something hard, do an adventure together, because there's so much amazing opportunities when you're building something new, trying hard things in new environments with your spouse. That the opportunities, you and I do that all the time.
Yeah.
We're constantly, well, to be fair, the first like 8 or 9 years, we did not. We kind of sat in that house.
But would you agree that those 8 years, it wasn't that we just didn't want to do stuff? I believe that deep down there was like a fear of stepping out of our comfort zone, a fear like God could have been prompting us to do things and wanting us to move forward. And we were seeking after him, but I have my plan. We're going to pay off the house and, we're going to do this.
Absolutely.
And so you're like, have one foot through the door almost with our walk with the Lord. We weren't fully bought in, fully stepped into whatever you want, Lord. Whatever you want us to do. Because as soon as we did that, and we did the first step, which was selling everything, moving into the trailer, buying that land, and then that was the stripping down of everything in our lives. As soon as we did that, we were like, whoa,
this is cool.
There is so much fruit here. This is a whole different life.
Yep.
And I love this. I want to do this. Now, you say this all the time. That doesn't mean that it's easy and that it was like perfect, but it was so rewarding and so fruitful. You and I grew so much together. Our family changed constantly. Just what do you want us to do, Lord? And that doesn't mean moving all the time. That just happened to be our story. But whatever it is for you, whatever God's prompting you to do, sometimes I just think we allow fear to get in the way. And fear is a sin. Like, it's stopping us from moving us closer to the Lord.
Yeah, I think far too often we get stuck in a routine and think this is what I'm supposed to do. But the reality is I'm doing it because it's safe and I feel comfortable here. There's so much missed opportunity. So much of your and my relationship now is based on us previously going through, like doing crazy things with one another. And if you get too much stuck in one type of rut, one type of routine, you just miss opportunities to have growth between you and I, to challenge our peers, to like, there's so much stuff that you gain out of trying harder things together.
There's so many things too that I think we don't think about. It can be so much about us and what God's wanting to do in our lives, but we don't often think about what he wants us to be doing in somebody else's life. Doing those things can be so rewarding, just knowing that God's using us to do something in somebody else's life and not our own also. Like he has such a grand plan that we have no idea. And we only get to see sometimes little pieces of it.
Yep.
So I cut your story off about...
Nah, you didn't cut me off. I don't mind. He is in this really cool state though now. I was so pumped. He called me and he's like, I'm going to move. I had no idea. I did not see it coming in a million years. And I was so pumped on it, especially because he's going West Coast to East Coast. It's such a cool opportunity for him and his wife to grow into this new phase. I feel like you get a really cool opportunity when you and your spouse say, let's get nuts. Let's go do an adventure together. You have nobody else. So talk about two become one, or like a single organism type mentality. You have to. You're abandoning everybody else when you go do something like that, and all you have is each other. Now you're back to back fighting the world. You don't have any opportunity to go at each other. You have to lock in, and you have to go, or I mean, you don't have to, but it doesn't end well if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the other things that kind of came up in thinking about this is that you and I have constantly been reminded from the Lord, we should be counting it all joy when we fall into various trials.
I was just thinking that.
So James chapter 1 verse 1 talks about 1 through 3 or something like that. It says that's the Bible verses. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials, for it's the perfecting of your faith. I'm paraphrasing it. But because it'll perfect your faith and it helps you to grow and it deepens you. We're not meant to live a life that is easy and fun and everything's great. You become spiritually fat and lazy.
Yeah. And God does not want us to be lukewarm in our faith.
No. He wants us to be challenged. He wants us to be pushing our faith. The concept of lukewarm there is you can so easily fall into a rut of lukewarm type living when you're not challenging yourself. If we're talking about this like concept of hot, cold, lukewarm, you have to constantly be pushing down a direction or being challenged and refined to actually grow in a direction. You were even talking to me. You said, had a really cool quote yesterday that you were reading and you called out while I was making dinner.
In the refining, we see his image, or we see who he is more.
Yeah. And I think that was just like a really cool reminder yesterday when I was sitting there, because it happens when we're going through harder things.
Yeah, God does use what Satan intends for evil. He uses it for good. And that's what we're talking about. That's why it's so important to know who he is too, because he is in control. He is sovereign. And you can find peace when you go through those trials. But in order to feel that peace, you have to be seeking after him and seeking after who he is and knowing his attributes and knowing who he is, so that when you go through those things, they are less scary. And it's like, all right, Lord, let's do this. What are we going to do? How are you going to grow me?
Now, I fully admit that when I'm going through hard things, I've never received it well. It's almost impossible for me personally to receive that message. If you're going through something hard, I get it. You're not going to hear me saying, oh, you should count it all joy. That's unfortunately, I personally just can't. I don't receive that very well.
Yeah. It's a process for sure. And that's what we were talking about, is that it's a process to be able to go through whatever, if it's you or me needing to process something, needing to talk about it, or however we process it. Usually it's talking about it and figuring out what we're actually feeling, why we're frustrated, why it's hard, why it hurts. And then being there to support one another through that.
And more often than not, when I'm going through hard things, and I do read James chapter 1, which inevitably God is constantly bringing up, either just before I'm about to go through something hard, or we're about to go through something hard, or we're in the thick of it and I get that verse. I think what I am capable of doing is just taking a beat and then posturing myself back towards the Lord and saying, I am currently incapable of posturing myself into a position of finding joy in this. Can you just give me the right type of mentality in this so that I can grow, so that I can get out of this and be something better, that this will refine me, that this will help me to grow? Because if I'm not, you and I have learned the same lessons over and over and over. And we found ourselves back in the same painful scenario because we didn't decide to learn from it. And I distinctly remember sitting in the trailer at very, very first, and it was brutally hard at very first, when we sold a 5-bedroom, 3,000 square foot house, and 5 of us jammed ourselves into a 180 square foot trailer with a half functioning air conditioning kind of thing. I remember how
in the middle of summer we moved, or the beginning of summer.
And I remember how hard it was, but I also remember just saying, I just want to take a beat. What if I just push the reset button on all my expectations of what my life's kind of supposed to look like, how my day-to-day is supposed to look, set a new expectation, have an opportunity to set something new, and then seek after God what he wants to show me so that I can learn something through this, appreciate it for what it is, and then hopefully not have to go through it again. The irony of it is that as we got into it, we loved it. And after a year and a half of doing it, you and I traveled off somewhere to go see if we might want to do something different. And we were both very apprehensive to leave the trailer. We both went and looked at other opportunities and said, I'm very hesitant to go move into a house now because I feel like we're going to stop the growth. We're going to stop. So more often than not, the thing that you're shirking away from and pushing away from, if leaned into, can be something that is a huge blessing, because there's blessings in the harder things that you have to go through.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that we have to remember too that we cannot do that. Like you said at the beginning, we cannot do it on our own. That's God's grace. We need God's grace to be able to be postured in that way. We need to go to him and be like, I can't do this. Yeah. We just can't do it on our own.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm constantly having to be reminded that when I go and try and do things on my own, that always ends up with in a state of striving. And I can get results, but they're so temporary, because I don't think real permanent change can take place without the Holy Spirit being the one who instigates the real change in you. The only real change that you can have in you is begging God, please take away this aspect of who I am. Please grow me, shape me, mold me into something better than I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the good recap on this would be, if you're not in a trial, if you're not currently in a state where you're being challenged and you and your spouse are needing to try and grow in something, pray and ask God that he'll give you an opportunity. Seek out change, seek out hard things to do with your spouse. I think it's incredibly fruitful for you and your spouse to be challenged and grow together. If you are unsure of what you're currently even going through, take a second, a beat, and even look to see if there are things that you're going through that you're kind of ignoring, that you are deferring, because a lot of times that's human behavior as well, myself included.
I can count so many things that I have pushed off or like kind of just shoved down. And then now we've either done them or I've done them personally. And I'm like, man, why did I do that for so long? I missed out on this like amazing opportunity, these amazing blessings, this amazing growth to myself within our marriage. And so then once you do it a few times too, you're like, okay, I really just want to be aware of this now. Like, Lord, please, like really show me. And then I have to be willing, we have free will to be able to choose, and we have to be willing to do those things.
Yeah. The analogy of going to the gym and physical fitness is far too applicable to so many other aspects of life. It's a muscle to train yourself to say, hey, I'm going to go and lean into the harder things I'm going through right now, instead of pushing them to the side and ignoring them. That's a muscle to flex. But as you flex it and you grow it, it becomes stronger and stronger, and that makes it so the next thing you go through, you're more apt to attack, and you get more out of it. You learn more out of it. It's a skill set that you can grow and hone, especially if you're doing it in the right way, where you're seeking after the Lord and asking Him to adapt you and grow you through that scenario. So that's definitely our challenge to everybody. Find the areas in your marriages that you're deferring things on, that you're deciding that you're not really going and attacking. Go and attack them. Even if it's you as an individual in your marriage and your spouse is not wanting to come along with it, just go and start to try and grow into the new areas, that push yourself, try hard things,
And remember, your spouse is not your enemy. Yeah. We need to stay united as one. Know that we are going to go through trials. We are going to. The Bible says we will. And so we need to seek after the Lord so that we can count it all joy.
Yeah. And absolutely use the opportunity, any hard thing you're going through, to bond with your spouse through the hard thing. Do not allow Satan to get a foothold into an area between you and your spouse that separates you. Always lean into your spouse and lean into the Lord, and do not allow the exterior thing to be something that is causing you to fight in between. Like, how ridiculous would it be for you and I to be fighting each other over something else attacking one of us?
Which we have, and we do. Like,
all the
absolutely.
time.
And this goes back to the last week's podcast too, and why that time alone is so important, because so much of the time we use that time. That's why we'll go for a night away or whatever, kids, we're going on a date, kids, we're going for a walk alone, whatever it is, just so we can get back on the same page. We can be that one organism. We can be the one, and we can be united so that we can go through these things. But that's why it's so important to also, goes back to what we were talking about last week, is to have that one-on-one time together. You need time to be able to process together, to be able to sit and listen to whatever your spouse is going through, to be able to talk about it, for you even just to be able to process what you're going through. Because sometimes it's so loud, there's so many kids or your job or whatever the distractions are, that you're not even able to process it yourself. I know that I have that problem a lot, that I just need like a second to think about things before I can even communicate with Dino and let him know where I'm feeling or where I'm at.
Yeah.
So
one last big one that I'd love to challenge everybody on is spend time reading your Bible with your spouse, and spend time praying with your spouse while going through hard things. There's such growth opportunity. There's so much growth you and I have gotten out of going through a hard thing or a challenge or even an uncertain time. How are we going to handle this? I have no idea. I have no idea how the path forward on this. This is really hard. Whether that's like kid stuff or business stuff or whatever, it could be where we live, an incongruity in how we believe that we should be handling certain parenting aspects or third parties, like, mother-in-law or father-in-law, my in-laws are in our business and we disagree on it. Use the opportunity of time with your spouse to pray with them, read with them, seek after God, that you two can be in alignment together. It's an extremely healthy habit that you and I have continued to try and flex, that we've gotten nothing but insane benefits from.
Yeah. It's interesting thinking about the first 8 years of our marriage were kind of like this blur, 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door. Then it was like this, felt like these years of major blessing in our lives. God definitely had us on a mission for certain things, and he also provided for us in a very visual, tangible way. And it was spiritually rewarding and it was financially rewarding, lots of things. And now I feel like the last year or two, we've been in this refining stage where he's taken all that stuff and we've gone through some pretty difficult things. Now just molding us and shaping us into these older, hopefully wiser, it's really cool to see kind of the process of our lives together.
But all that's in hindsight. That's the really cool part, is you can look back and see all the different things that God was doing as we were going through it, and what a cool opportunity.
But in it, I'm like, wait, what? Where's the blessings? Where's the, I thought we were we had your favor,
Yeah.
But
it's painful. It's uncomfortable.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But I wouldn't change it at all because I love who you and I have been growing it into. So.
Yep. So that'll be Ash and my prayer for everyone this week while you're kind of going through and listening to this podcast, is that God will use it as an opportunity for you to be able to have perspective on some of the harder things you're going through, so that you can see some of the things that God's doing. And then we're just going to be praying that God will give you an opportunity to lean hard into it instead of pulling away from those difficult things.
Yeah.
So,
okay, this was a good one. And you got to see the sun rise all on our faces. You might not even be able to see us at all.
All right, have a good one.